Before you go out and start applying to jobs, you want to take a step back, particularly if you have been in a position for a certain amount of time, and reflect on your talent versus skills versus preferences. Because if you just say, well, I've been a director of marketing or VP or manager or whatever it is, I'm going to look for jobs that are at that level, maybe a little bit higher, and you do this kind of in a mechanical rote fashion, you will likely be disappointed. I have gotten in trouble on LinkedIn when I jump in to some of these threads. In one instance, I said to a woman, look, I understand that you're hurting. This is a terrible situation. I think it's great that you have gotten all of this support from these 50 people on this thread, or 200, whatever it was. However, what I would recommend that you do is connect on LinkedIn individually to each one of those people and then delete the thread.
My mission is to embolden every woman in the C-suite or on the rise to claim her agency and challenge the norms holding her back. This show offers candid conversations with powerful business leaders sharing their real stories of success and failure. Join us right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I am your coach and your host, Dr. Cynthia. Before we jump into introducing today's guest, I want to remind you that my new book, Human Capital Investment Strategy, is available for pre-sale right now. And as listeners and friends of the show, if you go onto my website, dr-cynthia.com, you can pick up your pre-order there. You put in the code CCL25 for Climbing the Corporate Ladder, CCL25. You're going to get 20% off. As well, I'm going to push to you $728 in free content to hold you over until the book comes out on February 3rd. So get your copy today. Let's jump in. I am over the moon to introduce today's guest. John Tarnoff is somebody that I sort of found through LinkedIn and was really jealous that he was on another show. So I reached out and he agreed to be with us today. John is an executive and career transition coach, speaker, and author who helps mid-career professionals like many of you regain control over your career, discover a renewed sense of meaning and purpose, and build sustainable strategies for working the way you want to. He was fired 39% of his 35 years as a film producer, studio executive, and tech entrepreneur. That is a lot compared to my once. He learned a lot in that and learned how to turn setbacks into successes in volatile business. He reinvented his own career at age 50, as did I, earning a master's degree in counseling psychology to share his career lessons with others going through similar challenges. John is a TEDx speaker and author of best-selling book, Boomer Reinvention, How to Create Your Dream Career Over 50, and has a LinkedIn learning courses that have reached over 270,000 learners, and by the way, translated into 9 languages. So he is amazing, and I am so excited. We have such shared passions and interests. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Cynthia. Great to be here.
My goodness, there's a lot there, but what I was fascinated, so I did my homework. I was studying you. Of course, we had the chance to chat in advance, but I love your contrarian positions that you have on your media kit. And I want to start with something that I'm really passionate about, no pun intended, and that is your very first one where you talk about don't follow your passion, find your usefulness. Say more about that.
We've all kind of grown up with this Joseph Campbell idea of following your bliss and the money will follow. And I think many of us were kind of raised and came through college with that notion, this very idealistic kind of anti-corporate philosophy about how to live your life. And I think what we realize is that that's kind of bogus. And this all kind of came to a head for me. I was listening to a commencement address by a guy named Ben Horowitz, who's a venture capitalist, and he went to Columbia and he's delivering the Columbia commencement address. And of course, this is a commencement address. This is the charge to the graduates about how to go forth and, do good and live your life and be successful. And he brought this up and he said, if following your bliss were a prescription for success, then every contestant on American Idol would be a zillionaire. I thought, okay, I'm interested to hear what the punchline is. He said, so instead of following your passion, I recommend that you follow your usefulness. Figure out what you can do that can move the needle for someone else who needs value. And ironically, your usefulness can become your passion. Because if you understand that you are making a difference for other people, whether it is a supervisor, whether it is a colleague, whether it is a report, no matter who you're working with in the value chain and the hierarchy, if you're making a difference, that feels good, right? There is purpose in that process, and you may find your purpose from this interaction that you are focused on. And what a great way to live your life in service.
It's interesting because it's a little bit context, but in some ways it flows, but it's a little counter to what I preach. But let me share it, and you either debate me or see if this resonates.
Yeah, let's get into it. Yeah,
let's get into it. So agree. I have a funny story, and I won't share it here, but about my daughter. When she was young, she thought she wanted to be a therapist, and the punchline is, I said, well, therapists do a lot of listening, and the punchline is, she said, well, what's a job where I get to do all the talking, right? So the point is, your passion, what you think is that which you want to do, may or may not line up with your natural talents. And so I'd add a layer, and I'd be curious to your thought. So I'd add a layer to when you're doing what you are naturally born to do and good at, right? If you're naturally strategic or naturally creative or naturally a problem solver, and you find a job that lines up with that, where you can add tremendous value because you can lean into those talents. So different than passion, desire, right? Those talents, then it's the pinnacle. It's the win-win, because you're not working so hard to show up and add value. You're doing what comes so naturally. How does that align with your thought process?
It's not binary, right? There are a lot of nuances that come into this. What occurs to me as you're talking is this distinction between talent and skill, right? And I think that's kind of the delta that you're describing. And skill is a particular set of actions and procedures and results that is learnable, right? And that must be honed, right? You may or may not be good at it. You may actually not like doing it, but you can get good at it if you need to, if you want to, if it becomes a means to an end, a path to someplace where you want to go, you're going to learn that skill. But the talent is something which, as you were alluding to, is something that flows more naturally. As we're growing up, we often get this reflected back to us. It's like, oh, you're so talented at. You think about taking music lessons as a kid, and there's some kids who kind of like dive into it. That doesn't mean they're going to be professional musicians. They're just good at it, right? They get it, right? They find a kind of a flow to it. Photography was always that way with me. I'm a visual thinker. I see the world in compositions, and so I was always talented, and I did all that through school and through college. I was always taking pictures. I still take pictures. I'm still kind of obsessed with film and photography and cameras and all that. But it was not something that I wanted to do professionally, right? But it was a talent, absolutely, and a skill. There are all sorts of different ways around this, but I think getting back to the kind of the heart of our conversation, this is really the intersection that I think is very important for all of us to work at when we are in the job market, when we are in a job transition. I'm going to bring it back home here. So you really, before you go out and start applying to jobs, you want to take a step back, particularly if you have been in a position for a certain amount of time, and reflect on your talent versus skills versus preferences versus kind of heartfelt purpose, at this time in your life. Because if you just say, well, I've been a director of marketing or VP or manager or whatever it is, I'm going to look for jobs that are at that level, maybe a little bit higher, and you do this kind of in a mechanical rote fashion, you will likely be disappointed. You will also likely not get the traction in the job market that you are hoping for. And you're going to wonder, what am I doing wrong? And I would say it's because you haven't actually reflected back to what it is that you do well, what it is that you love to do, what it is that the world needs that you work in, and what you can get paid for, which are the 4 ikigai questions that I always use as the starting off point of an engagement with a client.
Love that. It gets to one of your other contrarian positions, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Stop applying to jobs you can do. Instead, attract jobs that you were born to do. Is that in this essence of don't limit yourself to, well, I've always done and had this title, so I'm going to continue on this narrow path,
Right.
But taking that time to be reflective.
It's interesting you say that you use the word limit, because when I say this to people, just apply to the jobs that are really on purpose for you. Don't take this kind of, well, I can do 60% of the job or 70% of the job. You're not going to get it because they're looking for 100%. So don't waste your time. Be 100% when you're applying for a job. And people will say, wait a minute, I need a job. I got to cover my bets here. It's like you're playing craps, right? You're going to play the field a little bit. You're going to, place bets all over the table. That is a prescription for failure. You really, particularly in mid-career, you must narrow it down. You must niche down to what you do best and what you love to do. Be really clear about that. Find the product market fit for those 2 polarities of your value proposition, and really stick to your guns about focusing on those jobs. That will give you greater sense of purpose. You will not be as distracted by kind of going, okay, I gotta prepare for the interview for this job, which is about this. Okay, and then I got to prepare for that job, which is kind of different. It's about that, and I don't know really a lot about that, and there's some skills that I'm missing that they want. What am I going to do to kind of fit in can you see what a completely self-defeating process that is? Because when you go into those interviews, if you are not 100% right and on purpose and the person that they should want, all sorts of reasons why you won't get the job, but you have to kind of take care of all the reasons on your end why you shouldn't get the job. If you are on purpose like that, you will have a much more successful time in that job interview. You'll feel better about yourself. And even if you don't get the job, chances are you will make a friend in that room, and that friend can refer you to something that is going to land for you.
Yeah, that's profound. Those job interviews are more than just for that job. It becomes an extension of your network. It becomes somebody who maybe you're not the right fit for that job, that role, but you make that positive impression. So I heard you say, know what you're really good at and know what you want to, where you show up fills your cup, etc. Help me with the notion. So one of the things we have, a lot of women listeners, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is this notion of men will roll the dice and get promoted on potential, women on performance. And so my advice when I'm coaching women is sometimes you have to lean into something before you feel you tick 10 out of 10 boxes, right? The guys are ticking 3 out of 10 boxes and they're going, I'll fake it till I make it. Women are saying, oh, I don't tick all 10. Where does potential come in from the perspective of maybe I don't meet every one of these, what I would consider arbitrary criteria in some cases, right? I think companies have a long way to go to stop putting so much arbitrary criteria in that isn't predictive. But what would be the advice to the woman listening around that dilemma?
You bring up a really gnarly question here. This is a very, very big question because you're talking really about the bottom line, talk about contrarian. Hiring managers have no idea what they're hiring for. Job descriptions are works of fiction. And the sooner you, as the job seeker, understand that, the better off you're going to be. And you might say, oh my God, well, if the job description is fiction, it's not really what they're hiring for, and they don't know really what they want, what am I supposed to do? How am I going to, it's like you're trying to kind of climb a glass wall. I want to suggest that we take it back a few steps, back to this idea that if you know what you want to do, if you know what you do well, if you have a track record that supports your aspirations, you need to articulate your value as a product. Think of yourself as a solution to a very specific set of problems. I'm kind of echoing Liam Neeson and Taken, right? A particular set of skills.
There you go.
Right? And that's his niche, right? His niche is being this violent guy who happens to be, saving his daughter. Similarly, you have to dine out on your particular set of skills and find the people who need that. That's what you're trying to do. That's what the product market fit is all about. It's not about fitting yourself into someone else's fictitious job description. And I hear you about the culture around achievement and promotion. We're not going to solve that in this conversation. But what I think we can solve for is setting yourself up for success, whether you're a man or a woman, by essentially declaring what your job is. It's your job description, not theirs. Let them apply to you to see if you're willing to come to work for them with your job description. Because all of a sudden they look at your profile, they look at your background, they look at how you're engaging in the world, your featured section, you've got a good one, and they think, wow, this person is for us, right? You've already knocked down all of those gates that are being put in the way of most candidates. As a matter of fact, I've had this happen to me twice in my career. They may just create a job for you because you're articulating a value that they don't have in their team. And they realize all of a sudden, oh my God, we need this.
Fascinating, because I've never thought about, this is going to sound so blindingly obvious. I've just never thought about it in the context of sales. But when you're really thinking about what is that unique value that I can add, that problem I can solve, that thing I can make easier, better for you, and that I enjoy doing and that I'm good at and I have a track record, it's like ding, ding, of course, that's the perfect scenario. And I also, for the woman listening, want to say back to make sure that I'm clear, because what I'm hearing is, on one hand, don't be scattered. Don't, take that shotgun approach to applying for everything under the sun, which I 100% agree with. But also, once you find your niche of the problems you can solve, that which you're really great at, that which fills your cup, don't allow just the job description or the job advertisement limit you or scare you off of applying, because you have clarity around how you uniquely can solve that issue.
They may look at you and go, oh, they tick 7 out of 10 boxes, pass. Or they may say, oh, they only tick 7 out of 10 boxes, but look what else comes with the package. We need to pay attention. This person kind of blows the lid off of what we were thinking. You don't know. And again, you can't operate based on other people's reactions, other people's opinions. You're chasing fumes. But there's one element that I think is important that we haven't covered in this equation, and that is the question of mission. Because it's all well and good to know what you love to do, have the skill set, have the experience, have the track record, but as they say in financial services, past performance is not an indicator of future results. So, what are you going to do about the future? What's your vision for how you want to take it forward, move it forward in your career? So, I encourage everyone that I work with and people who are listening or watching, to think of your about section on LinkedIn not as a bio, not as a kind of a summary of your resume, but as a mission statement. Tell them who you are, why you do what you do, and where you're going to take it moving forward. What is the key problem that you see looming in your field that you want to address? What you're trying to do here is create a conversation, is spark some personal rapport with the reader of that about section, of your about section, so that they can go, wow, I identify with this person, with how they got into doing what they're doing. I see how the values that drove them into their business have applied, because you put a case study or two in that about section to kind of basically say, well, here's why I do what I do, and here's a time where I use this approach, right? And then you've kind of told them a little bit about how your mind works, so they can say, well, this is great. This is the kind of a person we want to have around here, who's kind of strategic and insightful and self-aware. And then you hit them at the end with, and going forward, here's where I want to go. And they go, oh my God, this person's really thinking strategically about the future of our industry. Let's have them in.
It's so important. It's one of the very first things, John, when I'm working, when I'm coaching an executive, one of the very first things we start with is them documenting their mission, vision, and values, and then putting it appropriately in resume, on LinkedIn, et cetera. It's so, what I find really fascinating is initially it's sort of like, oh my gosh, this doesn't really seem like a good use of time, and I already know what mine are, but they never put pen to paper. And then the consternation and struggle it is to get the first draft of that down. People minimize the importance of it until you go through the exercise. And I couldn't agree with you more. The other thing I find is that it creates your non-negotiables when you're looking, right? Because every job out there is not the right culture for you or the right fit for you. What are you not willing to take on?
Or, to kind of put the positive spin on it, if your about section is a mission statement, you're actually writing the script for your job interview, because you are addressing questions that are kind of on the interviewer's list. And by the way, unless you're interviewing with the hiring manager, and even if you are interviewing with the hiring manager, no one's trained to do this. I'm sorry. HR is not trained to do this. Recruiters are not trained to do this. And certainly not hiring managers. I mean, you've hired a lot of people in your career. So have I. The worst thing that you can be tasked with is writing a job description.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful.
So
yes.
just as a candidate, think about the situation you're in. You want to relieve them of this menial task of trying to kind of build a rapport with you. Oh, and you're one of a handful of candidates at the very best in those first few rounds, right? So here we go again. Imagine the impact of going into a job interview, having your mission statement clearly articulated. They've read it, by the way. They've read your about section. Now, in the interview, you can expand on what you lay out in that about section. You can have real conversations about how your why can impact their what, and then lead into their where, right? Where they're going, so that you can really build rapport. And here's the bonus of doing it this way. After the interview, they're going back to the committee and they're looking through the candidates. They're being asked by the rest of the team, so how did it go? Who do you like? Who don't you like? Who can we eliminate? Who should we focus on? Who's going to come in for the final round? Your interview will stand out because it was so mission driven. And by the way, the interviewer can say, hey, look at this person's LinkedIn about section, because it's all in there, what we talked about.
I love the part about takes the pressure off of the person doing the interview too, because that is one of the least favorite in all the years of HR. I did not like interviewing.
Just kind of pro tip about everything, which they never tell you. Your job, whatever your job may be, is to make it easier for everybody else. That's your number one job. No matter what it is that you do, your job is to make it easier for everyone else. So as a job seeker, which is your job right now if you're looking. That is your 9-to-5 job. If you're not spending your whole day focusing on this one way or another, we can talk about the nuances of that. You need to be. Part of that is to make it easier for the recruiters, the hiring managers, for the allies that you're working with who are trying to refer you to jobs. Figure out how to make it easier for them.
There's two really interesting and profound things that come to my mind when you said that. One is I feel like because the job market is so tough right now, so many people are taking this very anti-recruiter, anti-HR. There's a lot on LinkedIn and other places about how annoyed people are, et cetera. So it would be easy to show up or to be in a job search with that mindset, which is not going to serve you well based on what you've just said. If my mindset is you're annoying, you don't respond, this is just another, gymnastics I have to go through. And two, I think people get so nervous going into interviews, et cetera. And what I always say is, if you're the person interviewing, you want to find the right person.
Yes.
You don't want to keep interviewing people.
Yes.
I want you to be amazing, right? I go into those calls going, please be the one. Please dazzle me because I don't want to keep doing this. I want to fill the role. I want to switch gears with you because you specifically spend time with mid-career individuals. And there's been a lot going on right now, a lot of conversation about ageism, about, women and men over 50, et cetera, which is an area that you reinvented yourself at 50. I was 55. Talk about that segment of the population. I guess just philosophically, what's going on there and what is some of your wisdom?
It's really a shame that LinkedIn has become this pity party around age bias in the job marketplace. And I get it. I feel it. And I've been victimized by it. I see it every day, my own life, and looking back at my own career, and I see it with my clients. And as much as we have made progress in building awareness around this, and there are pockets of possibility around this. If you're not familiar with the site Age Friendly Careers, Tim Draper's site, AARP does a lot of work on age-friendly companies, reporting on this. I feel that it's good work, but it's a drop in the bucket. And I've been observing this now as a coach for the last 10 years, 12 years. My TEDx talk was all about this, how people coming out of the 2008 recession had lost all of this value from their homes, their 401ks and IRAs, and now they're going to have to keep working because they couldn't afford to retire, and where are the jobs, and age bias. We have to put this aside. We have to kind of put it over on a corner and go, yeah, this sucks, but railing about it on LinkedIn is not going to fix it. Your LinkedIn time, your posting profile is valuable real estate. Remember, if you're on LinkedIn to get a job, you want to angle your messaging towards the people who can either give you a job or refer you to someone who can. Don't spend time trolling and doom scrolling and echoing victimization. When you are, as it happens to me every 5 minutes on LinkedIn, when you are tempted to jump into a conversation and go, yeah, that really sucks. I'm so sorry to hear that you haven't found a job in a year and you've made 1,000 applications. Now, just parenthetically, I have gotten in trouble on LinkedIn when I jump in to some of these threads with a constructive comment, such as how to redo your about section, how to focus, right? In one instance, I said to a woman, look, I understand that you're hurting. This is a terrible situation. I really hear you. I think it's great that you have gotten all of this support from these 50 people on this thread, or 200, whatever it was. However, what I would recommend that you do is connect on LinkedIn individually to each one of those people as your contacts, and then delete the thread, because the people that you want to talk to are the people who are not going to appreciate all of this anti-employer, anti-HR, anti-recruiter sentiment that is being bandied about in this thread. Instead, you want to talk about value, right? You want to propose solutions. You want to comment on good stuff that's going on and add your own spin. And this gets us into thought leadership and branding and the approach that we all want to take, because this, bringing it all back full circle, is how you're going to defeat ageism. If they need what you are providing, and you are arguably the best available person to provide that value, they don't care how old you are.
I agree with that. I will add to that women in particular, so to the women listening, and I may get flack for this, but the evidence is pretty clear. We tend to trauma bond. We tend to, women in particular, much more so than men, tend to find that thing that's bugging us. And then it's like a feeding frenzy, right? We're all like, yeah, and another thing and another thing.
Men do it too. Come on. I mean,
They do.
It may have different kind of flavors of it, but men do the same thing.
They do. I've witnessed so much in the corporate environment that sort of the cattiness and the carrying things forward. And I think that there's a potential tendency there, whether it's a man or a woman. I think the sage advice in that is what you're not saying, what I don't hear you saying is ageism isn't a thing, or, get over it. It's not that real. What I hear you saying is, yes, I've experienced it. You've experienced it. We've seen it in our collective work. We're not going to solve that overnight. And if you're a job seeker, probably not the thing for you to take on in a public environment where your real estate time on LinkedIn or wherever you're posting is limited. So use it productively toward your next.
I mean, as Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind.
That's right.
The end is getting a job. If your goal is to get a job, then start reverse engineering that process. Who's going to hire you, right? Who are the people that you want to target? Who are the recruiters that you can reach out to in your field that you can develop relationships with? If you don't know who they are, start searching, right? There's a great big search engine behind LinkedIn. You can download an amazing amount of really tangible, actionable information about what you love to do, what you do well, who's hiring, what the product market fit is, where someone could create a job for you, where there is a need. Have those conversations. Those are the conversations you want to be having on LinkedIn. You want to be an investigator, a researcher to find out more about your target area. You want to engage with your professional community about what your strengths are and the weaknesses, what you need to work on, how to better articulate your value. What are you not saying that you should be saying? That's the productive use of time on LinkedIn. Not engaging in these pointless LinkedIn feed doom scroll conversations.
Which leads to something you talk about, which is the difference between personal brand and professional brand. So say more about that and how does that, what are your thoughts and advice as it relates to your branding?
Personal brand, in a strange way, is kind of like the resume. Personal brand, to me, tends to be retrospective. It's like, I've done all this stuff and I am this title or I'm this degree. And the professional brand, to me, tends to be more future-focused, more action-oriented. Here's my philosophy. Here are my solutions. Here's my whole person approach to business. So in a way, it's a lot more transparent, and a lot more future-focused. And it is not static. I think of a personal brand as something that's static. It's like, well, what is I'm building my personal brand. Well, I've got to, I did a TEDx talk, so I'm a TEDx speaker. That's part of my brand. At this point, I don't know. I mean, yeah, if someone watches the TEDx talk and likes it and emails me, I'm thrilled. I'm glad to get the positive feedback and recognition. But the brand that I'm much more interested in is the kind of stuff we're talking about, which is how to be a solution provider for people in need. Who is your target? How do you engage with other people in the same conversation, right? So I hope that kind of explains it. I kind of struggle with this a little bit myself because I just feel like this idea of branding has been so kind of put in a box when it there's more to it than that. And I think we have to think about this much more in an active frame than in a passive frame.
One of the things we talk about as well in the show is I am constantly saying, start working on your future today. I'm a big believer, right, that you can love your job and love your boss and love the culture and everything is amazing.
Until it isn't.
Until it isn't, right? Until it isn't. And so when you're coaching the folks that you work with, or your perspective point of view on this notion of how do you advise start working on your future today when you're not looking, you're not going through all of it?
So the question I get a lot from clients who are in their jobs, unhappy in their jobs, looking to move, and they feel completely caught between preserving the job, the income, trying to figure out how to spend time creating what's next. And one of the first things they're going to say is, oh, I'm not going to touch my LinkedIn. They're going to look at my LinkedIn and they're going to know I'm looking for a job.
That's right.
And my response to that is, well, maybe not, because think about what it is that you do. If you're in a job that you love and you're doing really great work, are you articulating all of that great work? Does your LinkedIn profile really just revel in the value that you're delivering, the experiences that you're having? And I'm not talking about, here's me at a conference with 3 colleagues. We just rocked it at, so-and-so, 360, 2025. That kind of stuff I think gets empty, right? And it's a little bit performative. It's a little bit look at me. But if you have this approach to thought leadership, which is a reflection of standing up for what you stand for, having a set of philosophies, beliefs. I was working with a client the other day, project manager, mid-management, in a job, doesn't love the company, wants to do more, wants to kind of move on, do something more with her life, bring more creative elements into her work in project management. And we're working on this about section and working on trying to articulate this why. Somewhere in her draft, I picked up on the word eliminating burnout. And I said, tell me more about this, because you've italicized this. How important is this to you? She said, oh my God, it's supremely important to me, both in my own life and dealing with how to avoid burnout, but also in the work that I do on projects, working with people and deadlines and setting expectations, all of it. It's all about burnout. I said, there's the heart of your thought leadership strategy. You be the person who talks about mitigating burnout, dealing with burnout, recovering from burnout. And she thought, whoa, that's interesting. So I hadn't really thought about that. So those are the kinds of, mind gyrations that I think we all need to go through in terms of how do we promote this value that we're talking about? You can do that while you're in your job, right? It actually makes you a better employee on that team if you are celebrating this work, if you are being insightful about this work. Don't worry about how you're going to be perceived by your company because you're doing something which is very loyal to them. Here's the hidden bonus. If you're so enthusiastic and so good at your company and you're expressing it and consistently posting about it on LinkedIn, getting involved in professional organizations, speaking, organizing events, mentoring, tutoring, doing lunch and learns, all sorts of things you can be doing as a thought leader, someone's going to take notice because employers want to hire people who are already employed. That's their preference. They don't want to deal with discarded goods, unfortunately, unfair as that may be. This is the employer mindset. So they're going to notice you, and you may start getting inquiries from recruiters, from hiring managers. You may kind of get networked into, hey, my friend at this company saw your profile the other day. Would you be interested in having a conversation?
Yeah, and don't bury the lead. I want to talk about networking because you sort of went there before we have to run out of time because I could talk to you all day. I was not a good networker. I consider myself a competent extrovert, right? I can do it. Give me a job. Let me pass out napkins, hand out drinks, be a keynote speaker, and I'm great. But if I have to just go among a bunch of strangers and be up and talk to people, oh my God. Yeah, I don't love that. So networking for somebody like me or somebody who truly is much more introverted can sound like awful. I know my clients that I deal with when I say networking. So I've had to break it down for them, and there's lots of ways to expand and broaden and build your network. But what is your thoughts and advice about that?
I hear this a lot. What you're expressing there is very normal, very typical. And you can pick them out in a room. You walk into a room and there's that man or woman out there who's like the center of the circle, big smile on their face and they're gesticulating and everyone's laughing. There's maybe 2 of those people in the room. Everyone else is like you or me. You don't need to be that person. And that is the limiting belief that really governs most of our behavior. Oh, I'm not good at networking. It starts there. Let's back that up a little bit. If you have done this reflective work and you have a really clear sense of who you are, what you do, what you love to do, what you do well, what you've done, if you have a sense of mission about where you want to go, you're good. You're not selling anything. You're just ready to express what is already present for you. All you have to do now is ask questions. So, what brings you here tonight? What do you do? All right. What's your job? You like your job? Oh, you like the people you work with? Just start asking questions, and then it'll start filtering back to you, and it will become a completely natural experience.
That is brilliant advice, because I always find when I can begin asking the questions and taking a genuine, authentic interest in the other person and let them do some of the sort of initial talking, it creates this comfort, rapport, et cetera. And yes, they're going to reciprocate with questions back. But to your point, you've already sort of eased in. But the big highlight is that you're showing up clear about your mission, clear about what you do, clear about your value.
It's all in that prep. If you've done that prep, networking is not a problem.
The other thing I advise people, especially with LinkedIn and places like that, is, people love to have their advice or wisdom sought, right? For most of us, it feels good when somebody says, hey, John,
absolutely,
I've admired you for a long time. I just want to get your thoughts or advice about this. Most of the time, we're like, absolutely, I can find 15 minutes to have a virtual chat with you or coffee, what have you. So what I advise a lot of folks is when you're working that virtual network to find people that are in jobs that hire the types of positions you're looking for or make the kinds of decisions, is you're not connecting to say, hey, John, I was wondering if you have a job at your company or what, that sort of thing. You're saying, John, I'm in a career transition and I've been following you on LinkedIn. I really like what you have to say. And I was hoping maybe you could spend 10 or 15 minutes. I'd love to get your advice on my transition. Don't you find that people are so incredibly willing to lean in?
Absolutely. I mean, this was when I was a kid starting out in the business, this is how I did it. Informational interviews are the secret key to getting your next job. Ask for advice, they'll give you a job. If you ask for a job, they'll give you advice. But if you adopt this attitude of, hey, in my case as a kid, it's like, hey, I'm just getting into the business. I see you've done this. I'm really interested in doing what you do. Do you have some tips? Now, as a kid, it's easier to get in, right? Because everyone wants to talk to kids and support education. But to your point, people do love to give advice, and people are available to that. So informational interviews are really key. And one of the most important kind of protocols around this, again with LinkedIn, is to look at your second level connections. That is the first level connections of all the people that you're connected to. Really concentrate in that field, in that second level connection. Because if you find someone who is appropriate, who's either at a company or in a role that makes a lot of sense, where you can maybe get some referrals from them or at least get a connection and some conversation going, and you see that 30 people in common, well, they're going to see that as well. That's a great calling card. And you lead with that in your DM and say, hey, I see we have 30 people in common here on LinkedIn. Oh my God. I'm doing some research. I'm trying to up my game. Whatever the lead in that you use to say, this is not about a job. And guess what? They know it's about a job. And that's okay, because that's why we're on LinkedIn. We all get the game, right? That person that you reach out to who seems to have a great job, they could be out of that great job in 6 months. And maybe you're in a new job. Maybe they're calling you in 6 months.
So for the woman listening, you are not burdening someone when you reach out and ask for advice or wisdom. You, in many cases, it's flattering, it's an honor. I love the idea of that second level. I hadn't thought about that before. I think that's really, really profound advice.
Here's another LinkedIn networking trick, which is a follower strategy. Instead of following Brene Brown's and Arianna Huffington's of the world, that's all fine. But you're not going to get a lot of traction with someone with 1 million, 2 million followers. What I would recommend is that you pick someone in your industry, someone who's active, someone who posts, someone who is perhaps a CEO or an academic or a journalist or whatever, covering your area, who's got maybe 20, 50, 100,000 followers. Follow them. Lurk on their feed. See who is engaging with them in the conversations. You may find relationships there. You may find connections there that are valuable. Get into those conversations because they are likely going to be about the work that you do. Because this person is going to be posting about that. They're not going to be posting about, oh, I need a job and I just got fired. And this is a professional conversation. So be part of that conversation. People are going to start popping up. You're going to see them. Maybe they'll reach out to you, but you can certainly reach out to them. It's another way to go.
So I end every show with this question, which is, what is one thing you would encourage the person listening to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing?
Start believing, and you can write yourself a little affirmation and post it on your bathroom mirror. Start believing that you are a valuable, experienced professional who can move the dial for one lucky hiring manager. Stop engaging in pointless conversations and threads on LinkedIn and start researching other people that you could connect with to grow your LinkedIn network in the right way. And keep on doing self-care. Self-care is the foundation of everything that we do in our professional lives. If we are challenged in the marketplace, the job marketplace, if we need a new job, it can get depleting very quickly. You can get really discouraged. So prioritize your self-care. You may not be an early riser. I would encourage you to train yourself to get up a little bit earlier, do some self-care, whether it's exercise, meditation, journaling is my big go-to every day. Start with a page of journal writing, free form, what's coming up, deal with your anxiety, get it out on the page. You'll feel better at the end of the page, and then get into your day.
Well, I'll just put a plug in for the 7-minute pivot. As those of you who've been listening know, my framework is a 7-minute pivot, 7 minutes a day to take time to journal on a prompt of what's standing in your way. And then choose one tiny thing you can do that day to move the needle just slightly forward in a new direction. So, John Tarnoff, you are such a gift. This has been such a pleasure and so much sage advice and wisdom. I am confident that those listening are taking so much away, and we'll attempt to put as much as we can in the show notes, but talk about where folks can get a hold of you. I know your book, Boomer Reinvention, is available wherever fine books are sold. And how else? We'll put it in the show notes, but how can people get a hold of you?
It's really easy. Just go to my LinkedIn profile. I'm, I think, the only John Tarnoff who's a coach on LinkedIn, and connect with me and send me a DM and let me know what's going on.
You're so generous. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. That concludes today's episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. Thank you for spending this time with us, for carving out a little bit of your day. Have an incredible rest of your day and week. Until next time, you've got this. That concludes today's episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I'd be so grateful if you'd rate and comment on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Visit CynthiaBentzen-Mercer.com and find me on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer.